Welcome back to Steel and Style. I am one of two hosts, Caleb Daniels of Commando Bond, and I am joined, as always, by my dear friend and compatriot here, Eli of 1776 Duck, and of course, Alchemy Custom Weaponry. How we doing, man?
Absolutely. I'm doing good, brother. I hope you are.
It's a good day. I can't complain. You and I get to virtually chat again. You know, it's a crime we don't get to see each other. I just sent you a little Instagram post. It's like, born to see each other every day, destined to see each other twice a year.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's, thankfully we get to do these calls.
No, I do. You know what? I do appreciate these podcasts because it does give us a time to sit down and kind of talk about what we want to talk about at our own pace. Where most of the time nowadays we're talking about work stuff and
Yeah.
just general Instagram tomfoolery regarding our brands. So I do appreciate this time where we get to enjoy what we're talking about. You asked me how I did. I kind of lied to you. Okay, I said I was doing good. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a little irritated. So this is about the time we get into our ad read from guns.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guns website, as we now have to say.
Absolutely.
So anyway, and that hasn't changed. But I had two pretty badass guns that were supposed to be delivered today that were not. And so I'm ready to take up a crusade against the UPS and really be able to figure out why they're incapable of doing their job. Because I have two extremely freaking cool guns that I got off GDC and the certified used. And man, I was so pumped for them. And crazy enough, everything else for the guns came in today. The guns, and so I'm a little frustrated. I'm a little down, if you will, because those didn't get delivered today.
Yeah, I think we talked about those particular guns, if I remember right, on our last episode. Just the insane finds on the certified use section of guns.com. And I think that's also a testament to GDC, is that we talked about this late last week, I might add, and they were supposed to be at your FFL today, to no fault of guns.
Oh
They did not appear, but that's why the Crusades against the old
UPS that will feel the swiftness of my wrath. But hey, listen, and per usual, you got a couple of cool guns coming. I think. I don't know if those have been. I don't know if you've got everything kind of solidified on that end. But 1903 Colt.
Yes.
What was the other one?
A police positive, another police positive.
Police positive.
Gotta collect those like cordwood, and that one was if I remember right, like a 1903 or 1908 manufacture.
Well, it can't be 03 because they didn't come out till 07.
So yeah, it must have been an 08 then. It was an 08. That's right, because I remember it being.
So
I was like, oh, it's 1900 because it was a 1903 from 1911 and a police positive from 1908 because that's a 1903 variant, of course, the 3.8 automatic. So I remember it was fun that all the numbers kind of aligned to different Colt models. Yeah, it all worked out.
Yeah, I really wanted to get that 1903, but I decided to be a generous god.
Well, you got them stacked about as heavy as I do PPKs, so I got to have at least one of them at some point. So that was very kind of you.
Yeah, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 of them. So I figured, and that one was a particularly cool one. Not gonna lie to you, for another, stupid price. In fact, actually, funny enough, one of my buddies, Clay, M57 firing device, off Instagram, he actually was influenced by our Pocket Auto. He literally sent me a message saying, "Hey, I watched the Pocket Auto, or listened to the Pocket Auto, podcast that we did last week," and he's like, "Gotta have one," and found one on the regular used for gun website for like $500 or something like that, and ended up picking that gun up. That was a Type 3.
Nice.
Which technically your gun is a Type 3 as well. Your gun is an early Type 3, I think first year production Type 3. Really cool because you get all the finishing that makes a Type 1 pretty desirable.
Yeah.
But and you get a couple other things. You're still having some niter blue. It's still that old school.
Yeah, so you get those niter blue small parts and stuff that just look gorgeous.
Yep, and they're but for all intents and purposes, if something happens where you have to replace a part on the gun, Type 3s are going to be much easier to
Sure.
work on and have worked on than a Type 2 or a Type 1. Damn sure a Type 1, because Type 1s are very, very unique, as well as the Type 2s are as well. So, anyways, with all that, GDC, we love you. Caleb and I would have to say we might be a little bit addicted to the GDC experience, if you will.
Yeah. Well, because, not to be Billy Mays here, but there is a but wait, there's more moment, because not only did I pick up a police positive, which is exciting to cut up, because
Yeah.
I need that. Yeah, cut it down. And it's in 38 Colt or 38 Smith and Wesson or whatever. We talked about that. No, it's great because that's technically what the Bond one would have been more than likely, so it makes
Yeah,
sense. So
sure.
I'm going to cut it up, do the Bond correct thing on the correct cartridge, the whole 9 yards. But the 1903 fell into that $500 price range, like to the penny, basically. And it was like 505, and ridiculous, ridiculous.
Yeah,
But
that
that's
would be
and it's in great shape, but it's also in shooter quality, which is what I want. So to your point, like it'll be nice to have some of those really cool examples at some point that aren't like shooter grade that I can just kind of
yeah.
keep as like that like the first police positive special that I got that's unfired, right? Like that's something that you probably do want to kind of take a little better care of, etc. Whereas this other one I will cut down and I will abuse. So it'll be nice. But all that to say, picked up those two gems in addition to a Smith & Wesson Model 10-5 from Guns, which is a super cool gun. I think you and I are both kind of in the revolver renaissance, which is surprisingly not the topic of today's conversation. We've kind of touched on that already with the last one we did a couple episodes back, but that gun has always held a special place in my heart because it's got some of the coolest behind the scenes shots from Live and Let Die of Roger Moore. Just they had so many Smith and Wesson guns in that movie. I mean, a lot of it was filmed in the States. It makes sense. And it's actually his autobiography has a photo of him holding that gun on the cover and stuff. So always really cool seeing that stuff, and I'm really excited to have one.
Sick. Yeah, I know that'll be really cool. I'm excited for you. You're finally coming around to real men guns, not that stupid European shit. So with that, I believe.
Speaking of,
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm almost certain that's where you're going here in just a second. We decided to make the topic of tonight's podcast about carry guns, but more specifically, our first carry gun, because of course, you live and you learn. There's definitely lessons to be had about your first carry gun, and very few people, I think, do their first carry gun right. I think some do better than others, but it's not often that somebody smacks a home run with their carry gun right out the gate. So it's really interesting to see your first carry gun, and not only that, I think how that first carry gun then influences everything after that.
absolutely.
I think for a real gun guy, that's a pretty pivotal gun for them. I think that's an important gun for them. You hear all the time, "Oh, that was my first gun, and my first carry gun, and I sold it, and I wish I'd have never." Well, I listened to those sons of bitches. I
Yep.
said, "Listen, I probably am not going to sell this gun."
Well,
So
you and I both worked a gun counter in like
yeah,
the college time, and so you hear a lot of those stories, or you get a lot of those guns in on trade, and you're like, why did you do that? Why did you take this piece of your life and kind of just cast it aside for? Frankly, local gun shops are not known for being the most charitable with the price for a trade-in. So you're getting like a bill or something for it, and are your memories worth that? Or would it have been better to have that to pass down?
that's right. And so I want to let you kick us off here. Your first carry gun, I know that I'm almost certain. Well, I can see now for viewers who can't see, it's exactly what you thought it was. It looks like to me a Walther of some sort. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get the dash or the /S mixed up. So you just tell me what exactly that thing is.
Yeah, my first carry gun was, and honestly, I had to take it out of the waistband today. Because I enjoy carrying it even still. To your point, a lot of people make a decision and then kind of walk away from it over time. Obviously, the PPK is a huge one for me and always has been my whole life. Grew up on Bond as a character. This was actually my first handgun of my own. It was a gift from my parents. and it's kind of the gun I learned on aside from my dad's 80 series Colt. Got this right before going into freshman year of high school, and it was the kind of gun that I learned to shoot on, learned to clean, really respected.
What was the? I'm so sorry for
No, 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 no,
interrupting.
no.
Just want to back up just a hair there, son, and I want to ask you, what was the reason you got that gun from your parents? Was it a holiday? Was it a birthday? Did
Are
they
you
just?
ready to hear the? Yeah, not that I have any street cred to begin with, but it is the definition of the nerdiest possible amalgamation of things that you could imagine. Um, that summer, between eighth grade year and freshman year, I was a semifinalist in the national debate championship, and it was also my birthday, and so a couple things like that kind of all came together. Yeah, I got my wife in the background going nerd, which is
That's right.
absolutely accurate.
She's not incorrect.
Yeah, so those
She's
things that kind of all came together.
He knows.
Yeah.
She knows a nerd when she sees one.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no doubt there, but that was it, man. It was like yeah, it's your birthday, and you're a giant nerd, and you won some other nerd prizes at school going into freshman year. So you know what? We'll just kind of pack that all together and say we're gonna get you a handgun because we know you're really into that stuff, and you pick. That was what they said. You pick, and I was between. And I didn't know everything about guns. And frankly, we would have a very different conversation right now if I didn't make the choice that I did, because Smith and Wesson at the time was still producing Walthers in the United States. So I was between the Walther PPK, not the KS. I knew the difference at least there, or the Walther P99 AS, which quickly is like a Gen 3, right? It has the oblong trigger guard, doesn't have the screen accurate one. But frankly, I didn't really know the difference, nor was I so deep set in the details at like what 13 to go, that's what I need. It's
Sure.
not screen accurate, get me away. So I was really between like the PPK or that larger frame pistol. I probably would have been disappointed by it if it was the larger frame, just because 2 years down the road I would have watched the movie more seriously and noticed that it didn't match. So I selected the PPK and 380 in the blue finish. Remember going to, I think it was Cabela's. Yeah, Cabela's, not Bass Pro. Or no, it was Bass Pro with my mom, who did the 4473, and she is, her dad's a big gun guy or whatever, but he really didn't like pass that along to her by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that's probably the only time in her life she will ever do a 4473. It was very funny to watch her do the paperwork, and not that she was uncomfortable in that environment, but she was very unfamiliar with it and did the traditional first time gun buyer thing, laughing at like all the 11A through Fs of like,
Sure.
oh yeah, no, of course I'm not a felon, ha ha ha, that thing. And all I cared about was we were walking home with a Smith and Wesson, which, as far as I'm concerned, it was a Walther, and it says Walther on the slide and all that 9 yards. PPK. Actually, I remember learning with my dad that night that there was no slide release because it's all internal to the gun, right? So I remember like locking the slide back on the empty mag, and then we tried to close the slide, and we're like, why doesn't it close? And we had to kind of figure that out on our own because the little manual it came with wasn't helpful. And so it's a gun that I had a lot of learning experiences on, but all that to say, it's the gun I qualified with my concealed carry with. Hell, I've shot much to being, I got teased for it at the time, but hey, it ran the entire class, no complaint. I ran a low light level shooting course, the entire class with the 380 PPK and because it was my daily carry at the time, right? I'm like, well, if I'm taking a class about how to do low light shooting with a concealment pistol, of course I'll do the gun that I'm actually concealing, and then I also use the actual flashlight that I was carrying every day, which is just the Streamlight MicroStream. Great little clip on. Like now they have the Macro Stream, which is 500 lumens, which is pretty cool, but the one I had is just 250. So I took the class with that little flashlight and that little gun, but it ran like a champion. And yeah, man, it's been a really fun companion and carry gun. Very lucky, by the way, because Smith and Wesson, not known, they're known for wheel guns, not known for their Walther collaboration being exactly shining star. In fact, the PPK, for those unfamiliar, and the PPKS, of like the 12 or 13 years Smith and Wesson manufactured this gun, 12 or 13 years of them were recalled for severe safety issues, like discharging in the holster with the hammer down. Like, bad.
That is severe.
Yeah, that's like, it makes a 320 look like a picnic at some occasions. So Somehow, the last year of production, they actually figured out how to get it right, and by pure dumb luck, that's the gun I ended up with.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's really cool. And well, and again, we talk about how these guns sort of define the rest of our gun career, and it's definitely not something I think that is common. Actually, in fact, I actually think that's uncommon.
yeah.
Uh,
To
you
kind of
know,
like know what you want and go immediately
right?
for it instead of kind of dancing around the edges, getting the lower tier, finding, which is a pretty common story. There's nothing wrong with it.
Sure. And much like yourself, my carry gun or my first carry gun, my first handgun would also kind of solidify, uh, you know, who I would become as a person. But I'm really interested in, of course, the PPK. So this is going back. Obviously, you were fairly young. So this is all driven by the James Bond love, right? Like
100%. Yeah.
you're getting this gun because of James Bond. I mean, that's
Hmm.
what's driven your firearm kind of early, at least early on. That's driven your firearm kind of collection is James Bond, and I know it's still,
Yeah.
it's still to this day. The police positive, for instance, 1903, which not technically a named Bond gun, was
Hmm.
used, I believe, in the one where he goes to Asia, right?
Yeah, you only live twice. Sean Connery, some really cool shots of him with like an unbuttoned turbo and Asser shirt with the sleeves rolled up, doing some gunslinging with it. Pretty rad.
Right, absolutely. Because they didn't have was it that they didn't have a PPK, or what? What was the reason they used it again?
Yeah, so the old wives' tale, and I haven't found any like definitive knowledge on this, so I don't include this particular story in the book, but it is something that I've heard enough times to where I feel like I can repeat it, is they weren't allowed to have true blank firing pistols in Japan due to the gun laws post-war, but there was some sort of conversion process, and apparently the Japanese had 1903s
Oh yeah.
for
Oh yes. Yep.
so
Absolutely. They did. Yep.
they were very fond of them, and I guess the 1903, because of its design, was able to have like this electronic blank firing thing where it allowed like the slide to cycle or something. I That's what people said. There's some folks in Japan who have like taken some photos of like supposed prop guns in museums and stuff explaining how that all operated. Again, nothing that I can corroborate, but it makes sense. And it, either way, it's an interesting story that gives us a little bit more background as to why it might have appeared. But no, you're absolutely right. This gun was definitively selected because of the Bond connection, between the movies and the video games and the whole nine yards growing up. It was where I wanted to go with it, and even working a gun counter afterwards through high school and college, I had access to so many just standard issue guns. We had a range check encounter. We had a huge rental fleet, like 40 handguns. So I cleaned, maintained, broke down, and fired the Glocks and the SIGs and the FNs and the CZs and whatever. And I never really had any interest in them because, as far as I was concerned, well, yeah, you could find that any day of the week. Not to say it's like true cannon fodder, but it's like, it's not interesting. And I had
Sure.
limited resources, so it's
It's
like,
not.
no, yeah, now I'm more than happy to let you say it's not
Yeah,
interesting.
it's not. They suck. They're so boring.
But and that's exactly right. And so I'm like, limited resources. I have access to and have tried all these things, and I'm not thrilled by them. So if I am to buy these guns, what will I buy? Well, I buy the ones that I care about. And an easy lens to go through had always just been pop culture, thus James Bond, and therefore all
Sure.
these kind of niche Bond guns kind of became the forefront of the collection. But all the while, the 380 PPK was the dedicated carry gun.
And I think that's a really interesting choice. I mean, again, knowing you now, it makes sense, and almost no one would deny. Oh, if if they were put on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, does that show even run anymore? I don't know. But if they were put on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you $1 million question popped up, hey, what do you think Caleb Daniels' first handgun he carried was, and there's a PPK down there, I think people would probably be taking home $1 million. You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely a gun, and you kind of hit on this a little bit, right? But in my opinion, there's two gun guys when they walk in. There's two different types. They walk into the gun counter, they're getting ready to get their first handgun. You got two different types of gun people. You've got the practical people. Okay, they're your Glock 19 folks, right?
Hmm.
They don't really, they're not gun guys in the sense of, I just need a tool that is a gun,
Yep.
is whatever. I mean, I think that's lame, but I'm,
Yeah.
because
Hammer
the other,
completes task, therefore I buy the hammer.
Sure. And
Yeah,
so, then you have the other people. And this is, I think the word I'm going to use is the romantics.
I
There's
think it's a
there's
fair
an
one.
emotion that causes them to want that gun. The baseline reason for wanting the gun is all the same. We
Hmm.
want a gun to protect ourselves. It's our God-given right. All these things. However, how you look at it, how you approach it, is always interesting because half the people will be going that route of, oh, I want a good quality. Well, you hope this is how they go. I want a
Hmm.
good quality firearm that is going to be reliable, accurate enough, and will get me home at the end of the day. And then you're having people who, let's be honest, are picking what we could consider to be an impractical handgun
Absolutely.
because of the romanticism of it. Let's be honest, in 2024, and even in whenever you got that gun, I mean, let's just talk 21 for sake
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
carrying the guns. Essentially, I carried a little bit open before I turned 21, but I mean, it was only a brief period right before I
Sure.
turned 21, and I still, I still have mixed feelings on open carry, as I think every gun guy does. But you go into you're 21 years old. You've worked a gun counter. So here's the other aspect of it. Both of us have worked a gun counter. So it's not that we didn't know these other options existed, right?
Absolutely.
It's not like we didn't know that when in a pound for pound in a gunfight, a Glock 19 might be a little bit better than a Walther PPK, but who cares? I'd rather lose with a badass pistol than win with a stupid one. No, I'm just that's too far. But anyways, of course I don't mean that. But
No, but there's something to be said about like you said, the romanticism of it, but also combining it with utility, right? Going, okay, yeah, like I picked out this pistol because of XYZ reason, but it is reliable. It cycles consistently. I'm not making apologies for it all the time. And I actually, despite many people who do complain about the beaver tail or the slide bite or whatever, this gun actually fits my hand super well. It's one that I shoot very well.
you do shoot those well, by the way. I've always you know this. I've always told you shoot a PPK better than anyone else I've ever seen.
I feel like it's a low bar though, because a lot of people say it's an unpleasant gun for them. But I'm telling you, if there was a gun built for me, it really was this, and it's one that I spend a lot of time with, and I dry fire a lot, and so it's one of those things where it's like the gun works, it is reliable, I take good care of it, and I train enough with it to be competent with it. Therefore, I don't mind carrying with it. Like you said, pound for pound, is it the most utilitarian option at all times? No. Do I care? Probably not.
Hell no, you don't. Why would you?
Right.
And so yeah, and to your point, I guess we'll kind of briefly jump into the gun that
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
which should not, it should not.
Little shock, little awe.
Right. I mean, it's kind of funny because we're talking about, I imagine that most people that know us, we get in here, we talk about what handguns we started carrying and such. And I feel like almost everyone probably hit the nail on the head on what we are and it is so funny. And this goes back to the authenticity thing that we talk about a lot,
Hmm.
you know, uh, this shit ain't a game to us. Before the lights, camera, action that we're exposed to today with our platforms, we chose, with no one looking, these guns. And so, anytime somebody says, "Oh, you only carry a Walther PPK because you want to personify this James Bond cosplay," you kind of sit there and say, "Well, not really, because before anybody knew who I was, before I, wrote this badass book that, by the way, is available on Headstand Publishing. You should totally go check it out.
You're
Licensed
sweet.
troubleshooter. I try to always make sure we get in one of those every time. But anyways, before all this, you still chose to carry a Walther PPK, or excuse me, a Smith and Wesson version of the
Hey,
Walther.
and you know what? Honestly, I loved the fact when I was a kid, right, that it was a Smith and Wesson gun, because to me it was like, okay, cool, yeah, like the ones in the movies are a German produced, post-war and this, that, and the
Sure.
other. But I'm an American kid. I grew up in Kansas City.
Yeah.
It was really cool to me that I had James Bond's gun manufactured in the United States.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, and my gun was absolutely manufactured in the United States. A little bit older than yours, and that would have to be. And I'm going to show you. Of course, we're only doing audio, but just for me and Caleb,
Yeah, totally.
Would you've seen this gun in person?
Mm-hmm.
This is my 1985 Colt government model. It's technically what they consider at the time a Mark IV Series 80 gun. This gun is, well, it's the gun. It's the gun that put me over, as they say in the business. I had always loved, and we spoke about this, and I spoke about this on other podcasts. I've always loved the romanticism of the American handgun. Americans have always focused on handguns more than any other country. I mean, hell, in World War I, we were trying to supply every damn soldier with a handgun. That's unheard of. That's just, even to this day, that's not something you ever hear a military say or do. And so, we're a country where the handgun has been so impactful and so iconic in our history that me, someone who grew up really loving history, in fact, when I first went to college, the first couple of days before I realized they don't make no money, I actually was going to be a history teacher. And then I realized they don't make no money. And, I live a lifestyle that does require a little bit of dinero.
We do have expensive hobbies.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, mine only get, and you haven't got into old cars yet, so.
Hey, I got into Jeeps that got stolen. So trust me, I didn't have old cars that were super cool. I just had a Jeep that, death wobbled at 65 miles an hour, or had a steering column broken 8 times, or
the same experience.
I put 4, count them, 4 transfer cases in that thing.
Might as well have had an old car.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, I've always been interested in the history of America, and you can kind of plot the history of America via the small arms that Americans use.
Absolutely.
When you look at a certain gun as an American, it invokes something in you. You look at an M16A1, what do you think of? Fortunate Son, Huey's, stopping communism. It's that's what we're thinking about. You think of the Tiger Stripe, right? You look at a single action army. God almighty, you look at a single action army. First thing you think is probably impure thoughts. And then you have to slip it kind of into your waistband, But then you think of cowboy, you think of the Wild West.
Yeah, Marty Robbins with some big iron blasting, right?
Right. These are images that are conjured up just by the sight of seeing certain small arms, and that's how impactful they are to our history. So it only made sense that I'd find myself to the 1911. And to me, the 1911 is the peak of not only American, the celebration of American small arms, but the peak of the handgun period. There's never been a handgun like it since. There's been guns that have tried. People can say 2011s are kind of a derivative. Some, heretics say the high power is a derivative. But to me, you've always got to go up the creek to the source for the best kind of water, and that would be the 1911 itself. And so 1985 Colt government model, I'd always loved the 1911. When I kind of went back through history and I was kind of reading about guns and stuff, getting into guns, this is probably coming right out of I probably didn't start getting really interested in guns until probably my senior year of high school. I did not come from a gun family, so the exposure was pretty much something that was my, duty.
It was pure self-interest, right?
Sure. So I always seemed to gravitate towards the Colt manufacturing company. Of course, the War of Northern Aggression is a big deal down here. There's a lot of history we focus on with that. And so I quickly became enamored with the Colt 1851 Navy pistol, 36
Absolutely, yeah.
Black powder pistol. And from there, of course, you go to the Walker, you go to the 1860 Army. They're just such elegant guns. They're so stylistic, but there's something about a vintage black powder Colt revolver that even to this day, I mean, think about this. I actually, when we were at NRA show, I actually ended up buying what we call the 1872 open top conversion, which is essentially just a cartridge fired 1851 Navy. because
Mm-hmm.
I missed that gun. I had a little replica of that as a younger than I am now in high school. I had a replica of that gun that I'd spin non-firing, of course, that I would spin, in my room and pretend I was John Wayne and Clint Eastwood. And of course, so I saw that gun from Cimarron. I bought it at the show, actually. Not the point, but there has always been this infatuation with the Colts manufacturing company
Yeah,
because I
absolutely.
felt that the Colts manufacturing company was America's firearm brand.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind that the history that really got me hooked on all this stuff kind of predates, not really, but as far as the big hitters from Smith and Wesson, it kind of predates Smith and Wesson. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Smith and Wesson had done some pretty cool stuff that you kind of have to be lost in the sauce to really understand. For instance, the patent on the bore through cylinder. Smith and Wesson held that until 1869. So Colt was unable to have a cartridge fired revolver until 1870, which is when, of course, they
It's
started.
just a crazy concept that could be a patented item, right?
Oh God! Well, let me tell you, as you know, I get real into patent stuff, and you would,
Yeah,
trip at some of the stuff that's patented. But anyways, the Colts Manufacturing Firearm Company had always, and still to this day, captured my imagination. And
sure.
to this day, I'm a Colt fanboy. Okay. So I wanted a Colt really bad. I wanted a Colt 1911 really bad. That gun had really just spoke to me in a way no gun ever had. To me, it was the peak automatic. It was in 45 ACP, put down anybody on anything that I would probably need to worry about. And it just is one of the most sexually attractive pistols I've ever ran across. So I'm starting to gather up the dollars, and I don't really have enough for a Colt. So I do what a lot of people do, and I start kind of shopping around for clones.
Hmm.
And so I get to this one shop that kind of knew me, not like they just knew me family wise, not like at this point I was a nobody, and I'm still not really anybody now, but certainly less known in the gun space than I am now. And I really liked the Cimarron, which Cimarron, of course, is an importer, mainly for the Uberti style cowboy guns, but they also actually import, and I didn't know this, I didn't know all this at the time, but they import basically a pre-24 1911 clone, pre-1924 1911 clone, specifically for Wild Bunch, which is a style of cowboy action shooting, where you use 1911s, of course, based on the movie The Wild Bunch. It is one of the best movies ever, by the way. And I want so badly to do Wild Bunch cowboy action. I have no want, desire, need, whatever for any other type of competition shooting. But if there was a way I could go do Wild Bunch shooting, I'd do it tomorrow.
There's a really cool cowboy action range right around the corner for me at one of my favorite sporting clay courses. So we should schedule your trip around here. Come
Oh,
and
I
shoot a
wouldn't.
cowboy action.
Well, because you get
You'll
to
have your walk and draw by then, right?
dude, you dress up, you get to have the period correct gun. I'm telling you, everything about it is cool.
Yeah, we got to
You
fly like Crispy out here to film you in the walk and
you
draw
can
full
take
cowboy.
all this IPSC and IDPA bullshit you see nowadays. That's lame. I want to dress up like a freaking cavalryman on the putative expedition and shoot one-handed, mind you, by the way, one-handed with a 1911. Then you switch to your Winchester 1897 shotgun, and then you switch to your 1890 or 1873 lever action carbine. It is fantastic. And why that's not more popular, I don't know. It's one of the questions I have. But anyways, so they had these guns, and they had the wide spur hammer, they had the short beaver tail, they had all the look I loved, because even then, as you know, big fan of pre-war guns.
Mm-hmm.
Probably will be all my life.
Yeah.
Just how it is.
No, I mean,
And
like half the guns I just got from guns.com pre-war, right?
sure.
Because I think the aesthetics, to the point you're just making about like Colts manufacturing back in the day, there's a certain elegance to, I think it's the same with automobiles and everything else. When no
Oh,
one knew
yeah.
what something was supposed to look like, and they just kind of let the imagination and the functionality all kind of go together, the pieces that came out of that are the ones that define generations, right? And I think that's not to cut you off too much, but I think that's where the pre-war guns are kind of just incredible. It's where industrialization really was ramping up. Cartridge guns existed, and now you kind of just got to run with it.
Well, and this was one of the first times I actually saw this, and I never forgot it. Cimarron did the one stamp kind of 1918 to 1924 style roll mark on the pistols, and Cimarron's logo was like a cowboy on a horse, so they used that logo instead of the Colt pony, of course. And fast forward all those years, I never forgot it. And so in the classic government, that was the first thing I thought about, is when that had that been done before. And so of course we did the patent roll marks, but it had the Alchemy logo instead of the Colt
Which,
logo.
by the way, is my favorite roll mark you've ever done on
Oh,
any
yeah.
Resto mod. Seeing that in person, which I got to shoot it at Griffin and Howe, that was such a pleasure. That gun is so excellent.
That's
To
one
do
of my
that hard alchemy push next order that you guys do, if you're an alchemy person, it's got to be a vintage classic. And honestly, I was surprised. The front cocking serrations of the vintage classic is just a perfect pair.
on the marketing gun. Yeah, is a really cool
Yeah.
look. But, so I'm getting really, I want an old school 1911. I can't afford a Colt. And at the time, I had a gentleman who was my best friend. Well, is still not. He hasn't gone. But he is my best friend's dad, and he's pretty private, so I won't use his name. But he was a big time Colt collector, and every single time, which I went over to his house for personal reasons, I went over to their house quite a bit growing up, especially in high school, and especially in college too. But I went over to their house quite a bit. And I remember he always said, you buy good quality guns. You always have an investment in them, no matter what you spend. You always have some, they're always able to be, you make your money back on them.
Mm-hmm.
And his big thing to me was, one of the best brands you can invest in is Colt's manufacturing. He had the first Python I'd ever seen, the first 1917 Colt I'd ever seen. Again, to this day, a gun that I absolutely love. He had several, 1911s. The first handgun I ever fired, M1991A1 Colt. That was technically the one he had. He had a set of them. One of them he gave to his son, and then he had the other one. So pretty cool stuff. And
That's really cool.
I got to shoot his my best friend's one. That was one of the first guns I ever fired. So I went back to him and I was kind of telling him what I wanted to do, and he goes, "Oh, you don't get that. You don't get that Filipino shit. Get the Colt. Save for a Colt. Save for a Colt." Well, me, being pretty impatient, I was like, oh, I don't want to save for a Colt. I mean, I do want a Colt, but I can't save for it. I'm not finding them under $1,000. I mean, I'm in college,
Right.
working a gun counter. Let me tell you something. You don't make a lot of money working a gun counter.
No.
And you make even less when half your time is spent at a freaking university when they brainwash you with a bunch of Democrat shit. So it's one of those deals where I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, I put in the order with the shop for Cimarron. It came in. The grip's awful. The bottom half of the gun was like the bluing was purple, and I don't mean like a henna purple like on an old Colt. I mean some bitch looked like my hot rod. I mean, it was purple, which I love purple, not on guns. Purple's my favorite color. Again, not on a gun. And so I said, well, I don't really care for this, and this is so I was so not into 1911s as hardcore as I was. Like, I might have said now, oh, hell, I can get that reblued or, whatever. I said, can you please send this back and please have them handpick one that is, more consistently blued. Well, next one comes in. Guess what? Some bitch, the slide is purple as hell. And I just, at this point, kind of realized, I don't think this is the gun for me. The shop, who they were very accommodating. They said, hey, we'll give you back your deposit. This is not how this is supposed to be. If we find a gun we think you'd like, we'll of course call you, but here's your money back. And I was very surprised by that. And so I took that money, went over to my aunt, and she was awful nice, and she was very supportive of my firearms hobby. And so she gave me she said, I'm going to give you a couple $100, 90-day, loan, we'll call it. And I said, oh gosh, thank you so much. Because Christmas time was coming around. And for me, working the counter where I could basically put in over 40 hours a week.
Yeah. Christmas, best time of year working the gun counter. It's the only time you actually made money.
Exactly. You're 100%, dude. We would, and the best part is not a lot of people wanted to work during Christmas. So if you
Yep.
were an alcoholic of work like myself, I was like, hell yeah, I'd pick up that shift. I'll pick up that shift. I didn't
Hmm.
want to, I don't like Christmas. I'm not a big festive person. And guess what? So I was like, oh, you tell me I don't have to, oh, I'm sorry. I can't go to this Christmas party. I've got to work. But I just picked up everybody's extra shift. So I knew that was coming. I said, okay, I can pay you back after Christmas. No problem. Thank you. So I went down, and on a stroke of luck, there was a place in Charlotte. I've periodically looked at their inventory, every couple months, just because they've
Definitely.
never had a cool gun since. They've never had a good cool gun since. But I went down to Charlotte, and in the damn box with all the paperwork was this 1985 Colt Government model for $825. And let me tell you, son, I thought I had, the equivalent of that now would be me having like a Burton or a Shawlin gun.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
how I felt. That's how I felt. I thought there is no gun better made. This is the best handgun on the planet. And brother, I wiped that gun, and it doesn't look like it's been used because I cleaned this gun methodically.
Hmm.
Every time that I brought it out of a holster, clean. Every time I got back from the range, detail strip, clean. Which I don't do that nowadays, of course.
Sure,
But
sure.
when you're 21 and you have
It's
this,
it's the biggest investment you've made outside of a vehicle
that's
or
right,
education.
that's
You
right.
take really good care of it.
Yep, yep.
I
And I
remember I
remember,
had a little, those little palm-sized composition notebooks before the field notes really became a thing. I had one of those when I was like 14 in the box with the Walther. And I had on the front couple pages made my own definitions for like a basic field strip versus a detail strip clean.
sure,
And then
yeah.
I would document when I had done those cleanings and hey, it's been 3 weeks. Go ahead and get it out and do it. Even if it hadn't been shot, I was just learning. It was one of those things.
No, I've been there, and this gun, I didn't carry it very long because one thing that did not occur to me was that 45 ACP, which is hilarious because nowadays I would take the price, when I was 21, I would take that price for 45 all day.
Every day of the week.
But $45 back then was 45 ACP was $16 a box. That was crazy, to go and
Yeah.
shoot. And so
That's
I
how I
knew,
felt with a 380 because it was even
oh,
then it was
right,
23. It was more
right.
than 45.
And I knew that I had to do something. And so, probably 6 months later, I'd done some horse trading and some finagling, and actually got the Springfield Range Officer in 9 millimeter.
Hmm.
And I shot the piss out of that guy. Because of course we got a deal on ammunition working at the counter,
Absolutely.
and a deal on something that was already pretty cheap of 9 millimeter. And I never put nice 9 millimeter in that thing. The Springfield RO Elite operator that I have has had a hard damn life. But this gun I did carry. I took my concealed carry class with it. Funny enough, shot one handed the whole time. Because
Like pocket or chest with the
chest.
secondary. Yeah. The chest
Chest.
across. Yeah.
Yep, yep. And I shot one handed the whole time. And I this says nothing. This says nothing because I really didn't know what I was doing shooting wise. And I'm telling you, me being a below novice was still more educated than the other people I was with. The guy next to me had a high standard 22, which I don't. I now subscribe to the fact if you're going to take a concealed carry class, just shut your mouth, go in there, do the class, take a 22, shoot the damn thing, go home.
Yep.
Don't make a spectacle of it. Just get it in.
Absolutely.
But he had a 22, and he had been bragging about being a big game hunter, which he was. I actually knew him. He was a big game hunter. I've seen him, some of the shit he's gone to Africa. All his rifles were pretty badass. So he has this, high standard 22. And on our first shots at like 3 yards or whatever, because of how I was shooting with, sort of a bladed off,
Hmm.
classic Camp Perry almost esque stance, I could see him and his gun pretty clearly. And so I noticed his gun was jammed he never shot. So I kind of did something that was pretty uncommon, and I was the only one wearing a holster too. So I holstered my gun. I said, "Hey," and I called a ceasefire. And before the guy had come over, I said, "Hey, bud, let me see what's going on." And he's sitting there just hammering the back of this high stand.
Just trying to push it into battery.
Right. Well, once I realized what he was doing, I said, "You hold the front door." He had loaded, and I don't know how he did this, by the way. Still to this day, I can't figure it out. Somehow had loaded the magazine backwards.
Oh yeah.
And so he was pushing a rim fire. He was hitting
Yep.
the back of a rim fire cartridge that was kind of
bullet somewhat facing him at like a 30-degree angle, and he's
and
putting the case into something as hard as he can.
He's putting he's hammering on this thing, and I'm just looking at the corner of the breech block against the back of that cartridge. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to set that rimfire off. Because just, beforehand at work, we had some wild thing happen where something set off a rimfire cartridge at work, and it wasn't in a gun, So I'm a little bit, wary.
Rimfire is something to be wary of if you're not careful. Yeah.
And so I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And finally he gets it, turned around. But I shot the best of the class, which I would not be proud of my shooting these days. But, I shot the best of the class.
Yeah, but when you were the lowest common denominator, right? Like that's really what a concealed carry class is.
Right. And, it's funny because I was the only one shooting a service size pistol. I did shoot it one-handed. No one else shot one-handed. But everyone else was shooting 22s or 38 snub nose guns, which everyone who shot, think about it, everyone who shot a 38 snub nose pistol, first time shooting.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, let me tell you something. I'm a, slightly seasoned shooter. And guess what? I do not want to shoot a 38 snub nose pistol.
Yeah, the little J frames. I remember when Smith & Wesson, because we had a range at our gun store, when they'd come through, they'd always offer to do a range day, and they'd be like, we've got the new, air weight with the laser. You guys want to put a cylinder through it? I'm like, hell no. I don't want to shoot that 642.
I do not. But this gun has been, it's a bone stock to this day, with the exception of, and again, this will show off my affinity for Colt. I got rosewood Colt medallion grips because of course I have the original grips in the original box and everything. And then I took it even a step further, and I got Colt logoed Allen key grip screws. Because you can never have too much Colt in your life.
That's impressive.
So
see, it's funny because your gun's in such an immaculate shape. Mine, unfortunately, while it is a very functional handgun, the one thing that Smith & Wesson did not do with their PPKs was blue them well. It is a blued gun, but it has the smallest amount of finish on it that you could possibly imagine. Like carrying it in a suede pancake holster created severe holster wear to the slide.
Oh gosh!
Like and then I started. I worked with the buddy and we built the Spectre holster, which is a Kydex suede hybrid, and we used this gun to do the holster fitment. And I about killed him. I love the guy to death, but we were doing shell tests and he didn't air blow out one of the shells. And we do a couple tests with it.
It wrecked it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, there's scratches halfway down my slide from these little pieces of Kydex rolling around there. So it is a well-loved gun, but it looks like a tackle box gun for sure. Like
that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude, I'll be honest, I wish that my gun did. There were some circumstances, like I said, that caused me to do a little bit of a caliber change, and again, because I had spent so much money on this gun, I thought I was saving this as a collectible. Nowadays, if I was to see this gun the way I saw it before, straight to a custom shop.
Yeah.
So I mean, I kind of feel that. I want this gun to exhibit a little bit more wear. It's kind of. But, it'll, dude, I haven't shot this gun since I got my first custom gun. And it's not that I don't want to shoot it. It's just that, it's just not a gun I take to the range anymore. I kind of leave it up. It reminds me of where I came from. And, that's that.
No, I totally get that. This is one that I'll always, even if I'm not carrying it, it's in the carry rotation. It's a pretty common one. I honestly carry my alchemy a lot more. It's anymore, which is kind of crazy. I went from carrying a PPK, which is a very very small frame pistol, to a full 5-inch government gun full time. But I really just swap between that and my 7.65 threaded PPK most often. But this one is always in the range bag every time I go, and at least gets 3 or 4 magazines put through it. Because honestly, it's the kind of gun that I love to finish a range session on. Because no matter what else I own, this gun, like especially with like some serious like instinct speed shooting, I can really put up some high numbers with, and I really enjoy. It's just that last little thing, like, hey, this is a gun you really protect or choose to protect yourself with. Ready, set, go. Do a few, Mozambique drills with the thing, and I'm like, all right, cool. It's a good day. It's a good ending. Let's head home. It's kind of just a little range tradition I've set up.
Yeah, well, that's cool, dude. Yeah, the certainly two guns that I think are now we're sort of known for.
We've
Uh,
really turned them into like an indicative part of who we are, and it's like you said, like things that we were doing and wanting to do and collecting well before we. It's not like I went, okay, where is there a niche in the firearms industry that I could try to capture in order to talk to people in the American market? Why, of course, the only thing they want to hear about is a British spy who, you know, has had a couple rough movies in the last 10 years. That's who I should really glom onto. It's just I was
well,
a massive nerd. That's the secret. I told you I got it because of a debate championship. So if you don't believe me on being a nerd before that, that's a winner and a truth bomb right there.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, this is a gun I probably should shoot it. I thought about sending this off to get built though.
Yeah, no, I think it's
That
well,
means a lot to me.
well, I think if you got it built right, I think that's to your point, it would turn it into a piece that you would probably carry more. You'd put in the rotation, and you could have a legacy and story with. Because I think you and I both agree that the biggest crime is to buy something to not use it. Um, I'm really really a big believer in using your tools, and maybe don't abuse them nearly as hard as I have this particular variant of a PPK. But I think it's important to go, yeah, I bought this thing and I used the crap out of it my whole life, because then there's a story attached to it. There's nothing that's a bigger crime to me than a gun that's sat in a box in a safe its whole life. I was talking to Keith the other day, Keith Ford, and he was talking about this collection of Smith and Wesson revolvers that they were bringing in, right? And we're talking registered magnums and the whole
Oh,
this huge collection this guy had. But you know what he did? He kept them all in the boxes. He kept them all in the foam, and he kept them all in a garage that was not insulated. So these chrome guns had styrofoam that corroded into the finishes, and it went from a
oh
collection that
no.
could have been worth, I mean, an absurd amount of money, ended up being like a buzzer beater auction thing, because they were really just they were crap. And the biggest crime is they were crap, and they didn't even live a life.
Right.
They sat and rotted.
Gosh, if you having a registered Magnum and not using it is a crime.
Yeah.
It
And
is.
letting it rot in the box, like the cardboard kind of just fading into the finish, eating it all away, rust on the blued guns, chrome guns getting just annihilated by the styrofoam. I mean, it's awful. It's the kind of thing that you don't want to hear. And frankly, it's like, it's the, it's why I like hunting for used guns, because it's all, to me, it's about rehoming them and going, okay, yeah, like it's the same thing with like clothes, tying it back to the style part, the other half of the podcast name, right?
Sure.
I like buying used vintage clothes because everything manufactured before mass production and what we now kind of just live with, the mediocrity that we kind of just accepted, like the fast fashion and everything else where things fall apart in 20 minutes. I'd rather buy it older. I'd rather buy it used, and I'd rather it last my whole life for me. I mean, that just makes sense. And
Yeah,
it's
bro.
not convenient, it's not the most convenient way to do things, but frankly, the best stuff isn't the thing that takes 2 minutes to do. That's how we got to a part where guns are made of plastic that are injection mold and blow up in your holster, and clothing that is mostly made of polymer, that like a polymer pistol, and like a genius that I know once told me, could in fact be turning not only the frogs gay but you.
No, absolutely, dude. Well, I'm telling you what, I have enjoyed this trip down memory lane. A
Oh,
little,
absolutely.
it's
It's
been a
funny that you and I are like going back in time, right? And it's like, man, yeah, 13. That wasn't like we're young, but like we're definitely. I feel like death is near, which is I'm 27, so I'm talking about something that was 13 years ago and half of my life ago now. As a kind of just like a memory, which is crazy.
well. You are old.
I am old.
You're older than me, so that means you're ancient in my
Yeah.
book.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm not nearly as old as Gandalf the Grey, but we'll leave that to Ken Hackathorn.
I love that man.
A
I
hero.
can't. He really is. Well,
And I
listen.
stand by, Ken is, I not a fan of my gun, but I'm glad that, that I can enjoy it. Like I said, most people don't enjoy the PPK, no matter how many times they've had a chance to shoot it. I'm just glad that someone in this world gets to, and if it's me, then all the better.
Well, hell yeah. Well, with that, I think we ought to give this thing a clap. I actually don't even know how much time we've spent.
We're
So
rolling close up to the hour mark, man. Which you and I know how to time these.
we
We're getting
do.
better at this. We're getting more consistent. So thank you all who listened to it in the beginning. We're like, hey, you guys said weekly, and then it wasn't weekly, and now we're hitting weekly, which is cool. And this week we're actually going to hit the weekday that we were planning to hit, which is even cooler. So we are going in the right direction. We appreciate all of your guys' support. One last shout out on the end here as we wrap up to our dear friends over at Guns, because we can't say their whole name, but you know exactly who we're talking about for everything they're doing. Also, shout out to another sponsor who has taken care of both Eli and myself, which is Hold Up Displays. Huge shout out to them for making some epic gun rooms for the both of us. You've seen it in videos on both of our channels and a lot of our content, and there'll be plenty more where that comes from because frankly, it's created a nice little display, warehouse, and whatever for the things that we care about most.
Awesome. Yep. I think that is it for me. Uh,
Yeah,
Caleb, it's been a pleasure. Always is a
as
pleasure.
always, man.
I'll talk to you tomorrow, but for our viewers, I'll talk to you next week, and we'll have a good chat. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but I'm sure it'll be a good chat. So with that, thank
Always
y'all
is.
so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
God bless. Cheers.